"We're terminating you effective immediately. Security will escort you out," he said without even looking up from his MacBook Pro, still logged into his first 55 years old, watching this kid who I taught how to read financial statements try to end my career with a script. No handshake, no explanation, just a trembling HR rep behind him like she was watching someone defuse a bomb with a butter knife. The ink on his promotion paperwork was still wet, and he was already playing executioner. Bradley Patterson Jr. had his designer haircut perfectly styled, his Stanford MBA framed on the wall, and his disruptor confidence inflated like a balloon at a kid's party. He didn't ask questions or even blink, just read the line off his tablet, coached by someone, his father, a consultant, or maybe his bathroom mirror. I didn't flinch, just stood, adjusted my jacket, and handed over my badge with the calm you learn after 28 years in logistics and 6 in the Navy. He thought he was firing me, making his big move to modernize Anchor Point Logistics. All I said was, "I want to do this right. Tell your father the board meeting in 3 hours should be interesting." Then I walked out past the silent HR rep, the confused security guard, and the framed photo of the founding team that included me standing next to Bradley Sr. in 1996. And hey, while I've got you here, if this corporate chaos boils your blood, hit that subscribe button and give it a like. It helps the team show what really happens behind those glass doors, and you'd be surprised how often the one getting fired holds all the cards. Now back to the takedown. Junior had 3 hours between his first firing and his first legal nightmare. Maybe he celebrated, maybe posted on LinkedIn about tough decisions for digital transformation with hashtags like #leadership and #innovation. Meanwhile, the board packet had already gone out. Section 12B, the Emergency Succession Protocol, buried in the shareholder agreement like a landmine, written by me, reviewed by legal, signed by every investor who thought it would never matter. If leadership goes off the rails and an executive is terminated without a board vote by someone with no equity stake, all interim authority is suspended. The board meets within 4 hours, and voting power goes to the majority shareholder, me. While Junior drafted his victory speech, I activated the protocol, dated, signed, time-stamped, and hand-delivered to every board member, investor, and counsel with certified return receipts. He thought I'd go quietly, not knowing I built my position to be bulletproof against people like him. Entitled, impatient, handed authority like it came with the family name. My ownership percentage never appears in brochures or on the website. I was the foundation under the building, the backup plan in the filing cabinet, the guy called when lawyers circled or competitors tried to poach clients. I wanted security, stability, and equity, God, the equity. While they named conference rooms after grandkids and gave plaques to people with 18-month tenures, I took payment in percentages. Half points, full points, stock options instead of bonuses, voting shares instead of titles. Every major deal or new investor meant another quiet, methodical slice. I didn't play poker. I built the table and printed the cards. It all started when Anchor Point was 3 folding tables, a whiteboard, and Bradley Sr. thinking compliance was a handshake. He was a visionary who could see the future of supply chain management but couldn't remember if we'd paid the electric bill or sent $50,000 to the wrong vendor. I stepped in, organized everything, stabilized operations, secured contracts. For my trouble, he offered a VP title and a corner office. I declined and asked for equity instead. "You'd rather own the foundation than sit in the penthouse," he joked. "Exactly," I said. By year 7, I was sitting on 18%. By year 15, 35%. The CFO left in a screaming match over budget allocations, and I picked up his 15% at a steep discount. He needed cash fast. Divorce lawyers don't work for free. When Bradley Sr.'s brother tried to sue us for patent infringement and failed miserably, he wanted a quiet settlement. I took his remaining 22% in exchange for a bulletproof NDA and his promise to never contact our clients again. 72% quiet, clean, properly filed with the Delaware Secretary of State. Buried inside that ownership was Section 12B, a clause no one bothered to read because we'd never needed it, stating that if a non-equity executive ever terminated a founding team member without board approval, all executive powers would be suspended pending shareholder review. I wrote it after Junior's cousin tried to fire half our warehouse staff during a budget tantrum 13 years ago. That was the last time anyone touched authority they hadn't earned, until today. Because what Bradley Jr. didn't understand, what business school doesn't teach, is that inheriting a title isn't inheriting control. Control lives in contracts, Fine print, late-night protocols drafted when paranoid investors want to know what happens if someone's unqualified kid gets promoted. It activates exactly like this. One arrogant termination, no vote, no cause, no process, just a 29-year-old with veneers and a fresh email signature pretending he's in a corporate thriller. He didn't know that by reading that script, he triggered a legal trapdoor waiting 13 years for someone stupid enough to step on it. With Section 12B Live, I sent not just the activation notice but a full legal package, statements, equity records, archived emails, timestamps, notarized copies, even his termination memo with its grammar errors and HR signature. While he was figuring out executive parking access, the board was reading immediate suspension of Executive Authority Section 12B protocol. He was about to learn what real authority looks like, and Bradley Sr. had no idea his heir had stepped on a landmine with the family name etched into the trigger. Somewhere on the 12th floor, in a glass office he didn't earn, Junior was probably celebrating, thinking he'd solved his biggest problem instead of creating his worst nightmare. First day, first major decision, maybe he even texted someone, time to modernize this place. He sat back, drafting a company-wide email about exciting changes and strategic restructuring, something about embracing digital transformation and eliminating outdated thinking. Pausing halfway through leadership requires making tough calls for long-term vision, unaware he was about to lose both leadership and vision. Meanwhile, downstairs in legal, board members were opening a priority-mailed envelope stamped Confidential Section 12B activation, delivered 25 minutes earlier like a stack of subpoenas. Inside was a 2-inch stack of documentation. Section 12B activation shareholder transition proposal, a request for an emergency board meeting, the signed trigger letter timestamped at 6:47 a.m., hours before my termination, plus full equity breakdowns, ledgers, notarizations, and state filings. The reaction wasn't immediate. It was that slow, dawning horror that says you're not just in trouble. You're in litigation territory you never saw coming. When Bradley Sr.'s general counsel skimmed the clause and reached suspension of executive authority upon unilateral termination by non-equity appointee, he said, "Oh no," twice. The board was legally required to convene within 4 hours. The timer was already ticking. I didn't need to be in the building. The law was. The contracts were. And while Junior posted an Instagram story, champagne on deck, first move made, his name was flagged in corporate filings as the sole initiator of a termination he had no authority to make. Across the city and in 2 time zones, board members were canceling lunches, skipping golf, clearing schedules. They weren't angry. They were trapped. Section 12B wasn't office drama, it was fiduciary duty, voting rights, SEC compliance, personal liability. And there was the number they'd forgotten, 72%. Emergency recall of executive appointments made in the last 48 hours. Automatic suspension of unsanctioned authority. Mine reinstated the moment his was voided. The clause wasn't just enforceable, it was irreversible, a detail added during an investor scare 8 years ago to prevent backtracking with apologies. No undo button. So while he strutted through headquarters trying to access financial dashboards, boardroom chairs were being arranged. Bradley Sr. hadn't arrived yet, but his phone had buzzed 6 times in an hour. He ignored the first 5. Golf at Meadowbrook was sacred, but the 6th call came from his general counsel's direct line. He answered with a grunt, cigar between his teeth. "This better be urgent, Morrison." What followed wasn't urgent. It was catastrophic. "I need you at headquarters immediately," the voice said, strained and professional. "Your son signed something this morning. We have a situation." "What kind of situation?" Bradley Sr. asked, already moving toward the clubhouse. "The kind that requires emergency legal counsel and a board meeting in 2 hours. Click. He didn't finish his round or say goodbye. Just threw his clubs into the cart and made it back to downtown Chicago in record time, still in golf cleats and a polo. Legal was waiting for him in the lobby, along with the CFO, 2 board members, and a conference room where nobody was making small talk. The general counsel opened his briefcase, pulled out the packet, and read in a flat tone. Per Section 12B of the amended shareholder agreement, any executive termination carried out by a non-equity appointee without prior board vote shall result in immediate revocation of all interim leadership authority and automatic reversion of executive control to the majority shareholder pending emergency review. Bradley Sr. froze, staring like the words were written in another language. His face drained as he asked the question everyone feared. Who authorized the termination of Chuck Patterson? No one spoke. The room felt like a morgue. He asked again, louder, almost panicked. Who the hell signed off on firing Chuck Patterson? The CFO cleared his throat. The HR director looked ready to pass out. Finally, the general counsel answered, flat, your son. Alone. Without board consultation or shareholder approval. The silence that followed felt surgical. Bradley Sr. blinked slowly, twice, color draining further. He doesn't have sign-off authority for terminations, he insisted, as if saying it could undo the damage. No, the attorney confirmed he doesn't. His CEO authority is derivative only. Zero equity means his unilateral termination of a founding team member is invalid and triggers immediate succession protocol. Bradley Sr. ran both hands through his hair, pacing, muttering, then louder. This is a misunderstanding. I'll talk to him. We'll retract the termination. The lawyer cut him off. There is no retracting this. The protocol is active. Paperwork was filed before the termination occurred. Time-stamped, notarized, distributed. You have exactly 2 hours before the emergency meeting. But he's my son, Bradley Sr. tried, voice breaking. He's not a shareholder, the attorney replied. And right now he's in the executive suite planning a restructure he has no legal authority to implement. Bradley Sr. sat down hard, hands shaking, no longer the confident founder of a $450 million empire. Just a man realizing he'd handed live ammunition to someone who didn't know the safety wasn't decorative. What happens now? He asked. The counsel closed his briefcase. You sit in that conference room. You listen. You do not interrupt. And when Chuck Patterson walks in, because he will, you remember he controls 72% of this company and has every legal right to restructure leadership. God help us all, Bradley Sr. murmured. Standing slowly, the reality hit him like a blow. He never gave me power. I'd taken it, contract by contract, over 28 years. At exactly 2:58 p.m., I walked back into Anchor Point Logistics. Same building, same lobby, but everything had changed. The security guard who escorted me out now nodded respectfully and held the elevator. The receptionist smiled and said, Conference room A, Mr. Patterson. They're waiting for you. I took the elevator to the 12th floor, past Junior's office where he was frantically making calls, probably to his Stanford friends asking how to escape a hostile takeover. Then opened the conference room door at exactly 3 p.m. Every board member was present. 8 faces, pale, tense, resigned, knowing they were about to witness a corporate execution. Bradley Sr. sat at the far end, looking like he'd aged a decade, golf shirt wrinkled, hair disheveled. The man who built the company looked like someone who just realized he'd handed the keys to the wrong person. I didn't sit immediately. I opened my briefcase with practiced calm, placed a single document on the table, and said clearly, as majority shareholder of Anchor Point Logistics, I formally request a binding vote to rescind all executive appointments made in the previous 48 hours, pending comprehensive shareholder review. The words landed like a gavel. No one moved. The board chair, Harold Weinstein, cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. Motion received and logged. Emergency session is now in order under Section 12B protocols. I finally sat down. Not in a guest chair, not tucked off to the side, but at the head of the table where I'd belonged for nearly 3 decades, the spot that had kept this company afloat while others chased titles and toyed with organizational charts, and the nameplate in front of me reading Charles Patterson, majority shareholder, told the room exactly what they needed to know just moments before Bradley Jr. burst in, flushed and breathless, demanding why he hadn't been told about a meeting. He'd never had the authority to call, clutching his phone like a flotation device as I told him plainly that he'd never possessed the power he thought he wielded, and watched the realization hit him that he'd effectively fired the one person legally incapable of being removed, the majority shareholder whose termination triggered the very protocol designed to protect the company from reckless leadership. And when the vote was called, 8 hands rising in silent agreement, even his father's after. A long, painful pause. It became clear that his reign had lasted exactly as long as the board's patience, and his exit, escorted by security to the BMW he'd parked in the founder's spot that morning, marked the final symmetry of a day he'd started with swagger and ended in silence, while I returned to my old office with its restored nameplate, resumed the responsibilities I'd never truly relinquished, accepted Bradley Sr.'s quiet thanks for safeguarding the business his son had mishandled. And the next morning Anchor Point Logistics carried on unchanged. Deliveries made, staff retained, clients satisfied. Except now the leadership matched the competence behind it, proving once again that real power doesn't shout, posture, or chase validation. It simply endures, and when entitlement collides with experience, the outcome is inevitable, orderly, and final.